Hey guys, I'm just jumping in here to say that I'm about to record and release an episode about the FBI's response to Senator Johnson. Then I'm going to end up releasing this video after. The reason being, I still think that there's information in this episode that is absolutely worth paying attention to. But I'm going to talk about the FBI in a past tense kind of way in this episode, and I just wanted to let you know. I recorded this before I got the information about the FBI, and if you want to know what I'm talking about the information with the FBI, just check my latest video release before this one. Alright guys. The Hunter Biden laptop scandal, it's moving into its next gear of releases and its next gear of defenses. Now, there haven't been many good outright defenses against what's coming out regarding Hunter Biden. There's been a lot of convenient stories that, while completely absurd factually, serve to reinforce one's own biases very well. You see one group of people saying, this is just the same disinformation that the Trump administration tried to do with Hillary Clinton, and they're not even creative. They're just redoing the same old grift. And you have the other side saying, just like 2016, can we stop talking about the circumstances around the emails and start talking about what's in them? Because of all the things the Biden camp has said about this whole situation, and they came out with a comment today name-calling Trump and all this stuff, it was all a bunch of bluster, because at the end of the day, he didn't deny that the laptop was Hunter's. He didn't deny the emails. There has been, as of yet, no response to the veracity of the information inside of the emails. And so, yes, we are very much feeling like, wow, this is a repeat of 2016. And this is going to play out just like the last one played out. The question is the FBI going to completely cover for Joe Biden like they did with Hillary Clinton? Essentially, everything that has been released regarding this laptop is old information. And while I've seen a lot of commentators that really want to draw the distinction between this isn't a Hunter Biden story, this is a Joe Biden story, I think the most important distinction here to make is, are the emails legitimate? And if they are, how long are we going to talk about the fact that this information was introduced by political operatives? The whole okie doke of changing the tune on the Hillary emails, it worked. As of yet, the information contained in those emails has still not been addressed. The person who published them is under arrest. So, when you hear people saying Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, they're political operatives, yes, they are. Let me tell you something about this computer guy. Although the interview, we all heard the interview, and it sounded like he was, we'll say, not equipped to handle that kind of interrogation, he did make good moves. He gave it to the FBI immediately, but he kept a copy of it. If you turn it into the FBI and it disappears, you now have the information still, which is what it did. But then when it disappeared, he was like, oh crap, and he got into contact with Rudy's lawyer. He realized that not only did he have possession of emails that were going to be just pivotal to the 2020 election, but he also understood that the same FBI that went out there and covered for Hillary's emails, they were doing it again for Joe Biden's. And something tells me we need to keep our ears to the ground listening to hear from Mr. Christopher Wray. Something tells me we're going to hear from him real soon. And so a year later, at the end of 2020, we are now hearing about this laptop as if it's an October surprise, when the FBI's had the evidence for over 7 months, when the media's known about this for quite some time. Peter Schweizer's book's been out for a while now, but it seems an awful lot like the same old song and dance. The FBI's covering it up, the media is lying about it and turning it on Trump, and the tech oligarchs are censoring anybody with a dissenting opinion. Blah, 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 same old crap. It's the same old crap. And I was telling him this is funny because just like in 2016, the more they try to cover up for this laptop, the less people are going to trust them. And the more they try to censor people about this laptop, the more people are going to go find alternative ways to figure out what's on it. I've said it once, I've said it a million times. They don't understand the Streisand effect. They just don't get it. And that goes for the tech monopolies too, which is a bit strange, right? But yeah, so This information was given to us by political operatives. But is it true, though? But is it true? You should have listened to Steve Bannon, because he's been overseas talking about this whole situation in a little bit different tone than what's coming off to the people in America.
The mayor got me involved, as you know, Sherry, because of my interest and knowledge of the Chinese Communist Party, the many, many emails, many text messages.
Bannon knows the Communist Chinese Party. Nobody anywhere in the political sphere would try to even suggest that he doesn't. He's a political operative, and he's an expert on China.
Talk about the deep financial relationship and broad financial relationship of the Biden family with the Chinese Communist Party. He brought me in for that, and then I was able to help strategize with him the best distribution and release mechanism about, how to actually get this information out. So as people in Australia.
So he also brought him on to help him determine what the best release mechanism would be for this information. It's interesting.
From all the infiltration that the Chinese Communist Party did into the elites in Australia through finance and through the political class, you're seeing the exact same playbook they ran in Australia as they're running in the United States with the Bidens. Joe Biden has lied about this for years, and it's pretty stunning, the information that's come off this hard drive. It's really shocked.
I find it interesting that while the United States media is referring to this whole thing as the Hunter Biden laptop, it's a laptop, Bannon is talking about the hard drive, which is also what the Chinese non-state media is talking about the existence of these hard drives.
United States.
There's a lot more to come. And just remember, every time something comes out and you lie about it or you hide behind the Russia coverage, additional information is going to come out.
So remember in the previous interview, he said that Rudy had brought him on to determine, quote, the best release mechanism for this information, right? I think it's going to reinforce Bannon and Rudy's already public persona of being shrewd political operatives even more. Bannon here is going to make what will just feel like an outright threat to you, but it's not just a threat. It's a promise. It's exactly what he was talking about in the previous interview. He's describing what the release mechanism is going to be. Let's listen to it again.
There's a lot more to come. And just remember, every time something comes out and you lie about it or you hide behind the Russia coverage, additional information is going to come out and prove you're liars. So for Tony Blinken and all you guys seeing your careers go up in ashes, just remember, there's evidence, emails, text messages, a lot more to come, and not just from the hard drive. There's stuff coming out all over, affidavits, other things from other news organizations. You're going to be buried in an avalanche of evidence of your corruption and how you've sold out America. You sold out America to the equivalent of the Nazi Party in the 1930s. That's what the Chinese Communist Party is. This is not about China. It's not about the Chinese people. The Chinese people are totally innocent here. Most decent, hardworking people on earth. It is their liberation that's the defining aspect of the first half of the 21st century. And you have been complicit in their slavery. You have stolen their money to make yourselves wealthier. Joe Biden and his family and Blinken and Sullivan and you guys are caught up in it too, okay? You have stolen the money from the hardest working people on earth that are enslaved by this totalitarian dictatorship that breaks the underground house Christians, breaks the underground Catholic Church, suppresses the Tibetan Buddhists, puts concentration camps with the Muslim Uyghurs. You have taken blood money, to go out and you, Hunter Biden, to do your drugs and all your depravity. Well, it's all going to come out in living color, okay? All going to come out in living color. That money, sir, was stolen from the Chinese people in slave labor. Remember that, stolen from them.
So you can tell Bannon's a little worked up in that interview. But that's what the release mechanism is going to be. They're going to let out information, and they will stop when they stop denying it and trying to hide behind the Russia excuse. And until they do stop that, there's going to be more and more and more. And not just from the hard drives, but from other news agencies, from affidavits. He's referring to Devin Archer there and the other co-conspirator, not idle threats from Bannon. This is the sound of a guy who has what he says he has, and he's willing to drop it all. There's going to be a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are going to be interested in preventing that, which is going to make for an interesting couple of weeks for us. Moving on. This is the interview that Rudy did on Newsmax, try to ignore the interviewer because he's one of the most bizarre people I've ever listened to in my life. But for the past week or so, we've been talking about how there was a lot of vagueness around the accusations surrounding human trafficking and CP. Well, it all solidified the other night on Newsmax, and this is what Rudy said.
You have gone through the New York Post. We've seen that, but I want to get you first. I heard a little bit of your radio show, and there are some rumblings that Hunter Biden at one point, and I'm hearing that the Senate might be on to this, something like $800 million may have gone through Hunter Biden's Morgan Stanley brokerage account. What can you tell us about that, please?
Actually, Greg, I'm not as familiar with that as the Senate committee is. I know the rumors. I've talked to two of the lawyers involved. So here's what I know. I know that there's a Morgan Stanley account, allegedly, involving at least Hunter, his partner, Devin Archer, who's been convicted of federal crimes, and possibly Chris Hines, the stepson of former Secretary of State John Kerry. And there's an arrangement to launder, I can't say 800 million, but a huge amount of money for which they were paid a couple of $1 million up front. That's all I know. I don't know if it's true or not. I can find a few things on the hard drive that corroborate that, but I can't find like a memo yet. But I have to emphasize, I've only been through half of this hard drive.
Okay, there's the first thing. So Rudy's claiming to have only been through half of this hard drive. Does that sit with you? You come into the possession of this thing. You know that it has damning information for your political opposition. You know you want to release this information into the public sphere. And yet you start the whole process before you have the hard drive analyzed. There's a couple of reasons why this could be. He could be lying about the whole chain of custody because we've still not had the chain of custody cleared up to any way that satisfies me. Or it could be that this will be the reasoning behind the drip, the slow drip of information. Because if you say, well, I haven't even been through the whole hard drive yet, it gives you an excuse, a reason to throttle the information. Well, why aren't you just posting it all like WikiLeaks did? Well, I think there's a couple of good arguments to that. The strongest one, what happened to WikiLeaks? But outside of that, now Rudy can say, well, I haven't even been through it all. So if there's more information that comes out weeks from now, then it's just because I just now discovered it, right? But it gets a little bit more confusing.
Let me ask you about that, Rudy.
This is voluminous, and it already reveals about 5 major federal crimes and about $30 to $40 million that went to the Biden family as bribes to Vice President Biden.
All right.
Described by his son in the following language. I'll read it to you. This is, I don't receive any respect, and that's fine, I guess. Works for you, apparently. I hope all of you can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard, but don't worry. Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary. So basically, Biden was using his son in a horrible way as a bagman.
And he's not incorrect there. That's exactly what he was doing. It was a little bit more than that, though. We're going to go over in a little bit later in this episode about how and why children are used and family members on the outside, because Joe Biden and his wife have to report all of their incomes, but that's not the case for Hunter. That being said, I do agree that this is more of a Joe Biden story, or if it's not, that it should be. I can tell you that if you take this situation and you put Eric Trump in Hunter Biden's position, and you look at what would have happened had this story been reversed, it is one of the most egregious examples of the double standard. I would say rivaled only by the public and the government's unwillingness to do anything about what we all saw happen with the Clinton Foundation. The whole country knows what they did, and we did nothing. And we let people who support Clinton say that it was all a crazy conspiracy theory, and we let it go. And now here we are with another laptop, more emails, and we never pushed the issue the last time.
You would think he would get some kind of a political flunky to be his bad man, but instead, as his bag man, he used his son who's afflicted with drug addiction. And over the period of years, he made the drug addiction much, much worse by having his son involved with some of the most crooked people in the world.
So, Mr. Mayor, a couple of things. Number one, the documents, the one that you just summarized, I read that in the paper. I also saw the email between Vadim Pazarsky and Hunter. Very interesting. Let me ask you this, though. Are there any documents, and I know there's a lot of things that you say document Hunter Biden's unusual sexual activities, but are there any documents, any more documents that tie Vice President Biden to Burisma or to money from Hunter Biden? I mean, let's face it, it's Biden, the father, who's on the ballot in 2 weeks. Anything else other than what we've seen so far tying him to Hunter's business?
Yeah, two major things that I found. In addition to this, which basically says that Biden was getting 50% of the bribe money, which makes sense, actually. Well, this is really a very, very sensitive one. There's a text message to his father in which he says the following, and he's discussing his sister-in-law, who for quite some time was his lover. And he says, she told my therapist that I was sexually inappropriate. This would be with a unnamed 14-year-old girl. When she says that I FaceTime naked with the unnamed 14-year-old girl, and the reason I can't have her out to see me is because I'll walk around naked smoking crack, talking tom girls on FaceTime. When she was pressed, she said that the unnamed 14-year-old girl never said anything like that, but the bottom line is that I created and caused a very unsafe environment for the kids. This is supported by numerous pictures of underage girls.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Right there, what Rudy just said is something that, look, he can't take this back, okay? So now, this is what we got to talk about. So now this man has put his reputation on the line here. You, in order to believe that this isn't really happening, you have to believe that Rudy Giuliani, guy who was known for 30 years by nearly everybody in America as America's mayor, is 100% committed to lying and making this up, creating false charges, making false charges, leveling false accusations, and doing it all under the idea that he could be charged under libel. It's very disturbing to me the way this anchor handles this news. He basically brushes it aside as non-news. I don't know why he does that, but I do know that there is something going on here.
Pictures of underage girls.
So, Mr. Mayor, that's dynamite stuff.
Dynamite stuff? The man tells you he's got pictures of underage girls on his laptop, and you say that's dynamite stuff? What the hell is wrong with people?
And I've seen it.
I turned it over to the.
You turned it over to the Delaware State Police.
How does he know that he turned it over to the Delaware State Police? Because this was a revelation that he supposedly released during this Newsmax interview. But as you noticed just then, the host said the Delaware State Police, but Rudy Giuliani hadn't said the Delaware State Police yet.
Look, that's dynamite stuff, and I've seen it.
I turned it over to the.
You turned it over to the Delaware State Police, correct?
Yes, yesterday. Bernie Kerrick and I turned it over to the Delaware State Police because we're very uncomfortable with this.
So
we're very
Remember, he said he only went through half of it now. He says, we saw numerous pictures of underage girls. It made us uncomfortable, so we took it to the Delaware State Police. So obviously, they had already talked about this situation. And why is he just brushing that news off?
And I've seen
it.
I
turned it over to the.
You turned it over to the Delaware State Police, correct?
Yes, yesterday.
See, he wasn't supposed to say the Delaware State Police, and Rudy was stuttering, and he just wanted to help him, and out comes that information.
Eric and I turned it over to the Delaware State Police because we're very uncomfortable with this.
So
we're very uncomfortable with the fact that these underage girls were not protected.
So here's the deal. Hunter Biden, let's face it, he's never going to be elected to anything, and he'll probably wind up in jail someday for something. Who knows? But
You know what? Hunter Biden might end up in jail someday, and if this is true, he really is a piece of shit. But so is this host.
More concerned about the vice president because he's the one who's running. Right, I see that. But you know what I don't see, Mr.
This was sent to the vice president.
Here's the deal. And look, I want to be clear
That
here.
sounds like him.
Yeah, but you know what is
This
not
was
there?
sent to him. What did he do about it?
Exactly.
What did he do about it?
Well,
For 3 years.
Mr. Mayor, the
put
only
his
thing
son-
is, in that, hold on a second, in the text messaging you just showed me and we went through, we've got Junior, who is Joe Biden, talking to Hunter Biden. We have no acknowledgement in what we just saw from the vice president. We don't know what he knows or whatever, and this is all family drama. And by the way, it's so late. It's big time. They could be in trouble. And I'm glad you got it out there. But I want to know: is there anything concrete tying Joe Biden to money from China? It does not look good at all to me, those emails and what they were up to.
Sure.
Anything in that regard. And if you haven't found it yet, you're kind of saying it might still be there, because how much of this hard drive have you been
I found
through?
it already. You found it. There's a memo in here that says that 10% of the money that was being whacked up, that was $10 million a year, and then 50% of the profits with 3 Chinese communists, one of whom was a Chinese intelligence operative, that 10% of that was going to H for the big guy. So we've identified the big guy several ways. One, right after that text message, email rather, there's an email that is asking for keys for the office they're going to share with the Chinese communists. And the first key they ask for is for Joe Biden, the big guy.
Yeah.
Number 2, there's an anonymous source that has told Fox News that the big guy is definitively Joe Biden. He's one of the people involved in the deal. I know his name. I'm not at liberty to tell you, but I'm told that within a day or two, he's going to go public.
I can't wait to hear the information when it's ready to go public. Mr. Mayor, a couple of quick things. The Attorney General, we know the president is kind of impatient with him. I interviewed him last week. I said, is he going to be around for a second term? He said no comment. Looks like this hard drive may have been in the FBI's possession for over a year at this point.
No, I think 7 months. Correct, right.
7 months, to be fair. All right. So
Yeah.
at this point, is the Attorney General going to do anything before Election Day,
I
as
have
far as
no
you know?
idea. All I can tell you
Absolutely
is,
not.
if you were to look at the photographs on this hard drive and you didn't report it to the police, well, if you were a law enforcement officer, you'd be guilty of a felony. And if you're just a normal citizen, you'd be a horrible human being. There are numerous pictures here of girls that are being, they shouldn't be there. That's all I can tell you.
I understand.
And if the Delaware State Police don't do anything about this, it would be really a tragic thing.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like when the New York State Police didn't do anything about the Anthony Weiner laptop, right?
A couple of quick things. We don't have too much more time. Do you need help? I mean, I'm not a tech person. I know you're not a tech person. And also, I love you. We go way back. You've got a lot of detractors in the country. Everybody does. It's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Only because it's true.
Would you like any help at this point? Because one thing that I don't think is fair, quite frankly, to you, the media should have been helping and assisting in pursuing this themselves. They never did. They won't. They refuse to. I mean, and sometimes, Mr. Mayor, you're kind of, you're a lot to handle for them. Is there anybody else who could possibly help? Do you need help? Do you want help?
Yeah, sure, I want help. I mean, I've got half a hard drive to go through. Instead, I have an iron curtain that is trying to censor everything that's coming out. It's unprecedented.
He's right. It is unprecedented. It makes what they did to hide all of the stuff going down with Hillary in 2016 look like a pony show.
We've got, and it tells you how damaging this information is.
I mean, I guess he's right in that respect. But when you look at the overall censorship, what's been going on, what we are experiencing right now should not be a surprise to anybody. And the fact that they did what they did over the New York Post article is just a symptom, a very small symptom of an overall sickness. When you're focusing on the New York Post story, instead of focusing on, say, the YouTubers that were removed from YouTube that had millions, literally millions of subscribers, when they had done nothing wrong. They had committed no acts of violence. They had asked for no one to commit acts of violence. They had threatened no one. They only had a different opinion.
Greg, this is probably the worst scandal I've ever seen.
These YouTubers' entire lives were upturned. They had their livelihood, their connection to their viewer base. The New York Post. Damn paper's 200 plus years old. It was founded by Alexander Hamilton, I'm pretty sure.
And there's a depravity
it will be
to
okay.
it that's horrendous, which is why I reported it to the Delaware police. And I hope they're independent enough to investigate it properly. But their image.
Well, you turned it over to the police, but clearly you're asking for people to come help you with the other half of the hard drive. So you still have a copy, which I think might be a motivating factor for the Delaware State Police.
On here, where if you don't realize how damaging this is to young people, there's something wrong with you. And Joe Biden knows that. Plus, Joe Biden is the one who used his son to be a bag man for 20 years when he knew his son was a drug addict. This is not about Hunter Biden. It's about Joe Biden. It's about what a crook he is and what a horrible father he is.
Mr. Mayor, how about this? You've got the hard drive. Now, one thing that's different between how this is going down and, say, what happened to Hillary Clinton with WikiLeaks, I believe they made the data available. I mean, like they put a lot of it online so news organizations could access it. In this situation, we're kind of like, waiting for you and maybe the New York Post to kind of spoon feed us every now and then. Have you thought about just putting it all out there?
Wants it
whatever
all.
You can do legally.
Sure, I have, if I could find a news organization that's independent enough and willing to really deal with it honestly, as opposed to the iron curtain that I have of Twitter not being willing to put out the New York Post story, Facebook, New York Times, New York Post, several of the other New York publications, not the New York Post, obviously, the Washington Post, NBC, ABC, CBS. There's an iron curtain of censorship over this, and I'm going to tell you why.
He wants to call it an iron curtain, right? Because he's a Cold War guy. For people a little bit younger, you will understand the Great Firewall that cut off China from the rest of the internet. What's happening now is the tech agencies are building one of their own. It's not a firewall to keep the rest of the internet out. It's a firewall to keep you in your own prison of information that only reinforces your biases. So you get in this serotonin feedback loop and you're unable to withdraw from your group identity, and that becomes all you are. And then when you're talking politics or something stupid that shouldn't cause you to get amped up, because you are now invested in this, it's become part of your ego. It's become who you are as a person. So when somebody says something that is antithetical to your politics, you take it as an attack on you, on your ego, on yourself, who you make who your identity is. That's why it's so important to know thyself. Because when you know who you are, you don't fall into these accidental identification groups. But I'm off on a bunny trail.
To Joe Biden as a candidate, it should be fatal to him as a human being, because I don't mean fatal, but I mean he should be prosecuted for this. These are major bribes in which he sold out the United States to China, and there's a sexual depravity to this that is disgusting.
One of the reasons why they don't do it, the mainstream, and they should, they feel guilty over how they treated. They think they were unfair to Hillary Clinton in 2016 with those emails. And so,
I think he's actually right. As insane as that sounds, I really think he's correct. Wow.
She got away with major crimes.
Well, they're atoning, by the way. That's one of the reasons they don't want to do to Joe Biden. They think what they did to Hillary, they think that, and it's totally not fair, and we need to know. And by the way, last thing, it's indicative that this stuff has veracity, that Joe Biden has been in hiding, only went out for one ice cream, and then ran back to the basement, right? I mean, that's almost tantamount to a confession.
As a prosecutor, I will tell you, he hasn't denied a single text or email, nor has Hunter, nor have they denied that this is his hard drive. And this is 5 days, 6 days now. And there's no doubt this is his hard drive. And there's no doubt that the Biden family, over 30 years, in the words of him, Hunter Biden, made millions and millions of dollars, of which he had to give half to his father. That's the bribery scheme. What the kid.
And he's right. That is the bribery scheme. And he mentioned the other day in a video that we went over, Peter Schweitzer. I think Peter Schweitzer is actually somebody important for us to revisit. Let's get through this.
Used as was a bag man, and that's disgraceful. Joe Biden had a bunch of Washington flunkies who could have been his bag man, not his kid. If this kid has a bad crack problem, the reason is that his father put him in situations he shouldn't have been in.
Mr. Mayor?
Clearly surrounded by corruption, and his name came up over and over again in the Devon Archer trial. This co-defendant that has flipped and is giving all his emails over to the FBI to be looked at, he is flipping to get time off of his sentence. These people he's involved in corruption. There's no doubt about it. You look at a man like Rudy Giuliani, and you have to understand that Rudy Giuliani being America's mayor, if he sees himself as being just, you have to understand that the way that they're acting, and you have completely opposite people in Bannon and Rudy, but Bannon, you can see that it's the truth because you can see that glint in the wolf's eyes. With Rudy, you can tell that he believes it because he wants to be righteous. No matter what people think of him, and they really do think horrible things of this man, when you think about Rudy, he's not going to be doing something that in his own mind would make him seem sullied or not righteous or doing an evil, corrupt, wrong thing. Regardless of what the media and the rest of the world has accused Rudy Giuliani of, he feels as though he has always been able to stand on his morals and make the right decision, and that's important to him. Not necessarily that he always does make the right decision. What I'm telling you is, what's important to his ego is that he know that he is righteous. And so if he believes it, you will see that. And he does believe it, and you can see it. It's a note of confidence, an air about them. That and Hunter Biden's lawyer called the computer guy asking for the laptop back the next day. Unbelievable. I want to talk about Schweitzer. So this is a Peter Schweitzer article in Breitbart. Peter Schweitzer, Hunter Biden helped China buy our national security assets. The date on this article is 19 August 2019. 2019. Not this past August a year ago. I'll put this link down below the pinned comment like I always do so you guys can read the entire article, but I just want to skip to around the end. Schweitzer concluded, a guy like Joe Biden, who's been in public life for more than 30 years in government office, has to disclose a $500 campaign contribution. He has to disclose a $200 campaign contribution. He has to disclose that he owns like $1,000 in GE stock. And we have these rules because we need to know what entanglements or what relationships or connections there are between a politician like Joe Biden and his donors. So he needs to disclose that. And isn't this good that we have this transparency? But a $1 billion plus deal that his adult son does with a foreign government, the Chinese government, that is our chief rival, there's no disclosure requirement for that? None. Zip. Nada. That shows you how crazy the situation has become. And you can read Schweitzer's books. What I'm trying to get at is, this laptop is just another example of disclosure. It's information that has been laying around to be picked up and looked at by anybody for years. This man wrote books on it and made tons of money on writing about the Clinton and the Biden family corruption. They're all in it together. The difficulty is finding out where. One of the places that I think is a good place to start is mentioned in this article. This government body, I'm going to call CFIUS. It's CFIUS. It's a secretive body, said Schweitzer. They don't release any documents generally. You can't even obtain documents pertaining to everything they do through the Freedom of Information Act. And the rationale is, well, we're not talking about company secrets and technologies, so we don't want to give away any of those trade secrets. But that may apply in some cases, but generally, I think that's just a ridiculous excuse that allows them to not be accountable for the decisions that they make. is this deal is that there's no question that this purchase of Hennings had military application. The Obama administration approved a deal where the son of then-sitting vice president, in partnership with a Chinese government investment firm and Chinese military contractor, purchased an American technology made to machine tool parts for the military. CFIUS is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which he describes as an opaque governmental body broadly exempted from public transparency measures. And of course, one would think that that's crazy. So you're telling me that when a politician's family is involved in the purchasing of a company by a foreign nation, and this government body is going to look over the deal and see if it's legal or not, that they would then turn around and say, oh, and we're also never going to release any information about any of these approvals. Doesn't that sound bizarre? But if you go to the website, look right here. Section 721 of the Defense Production Act of 1950, as amended, mandates confidentiality protections with respect to information filed with the committee. It prohibits the committee from publicly disclosing any information filed with the committee, subject to limited exceptions. Information and documentary material filed with the committee are also exempt from disclosure under FOIA. Consistent with Section 721, the committee does not publicly confirm or deny that a transaction has been notified to CFIUS. So this is a opaque, dirty, dark governmental agency that approves these huge multi-million-dollar deals. And the assertion is by putting Hunter Biden on the board, or by putting John McCain's kids on the board, or by putting John Kerry's son on the board, that these governmental agencies, when they're approving this, the assumption is that they get the nod. This deal, the vice president's son is sitting on the board of this company. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I guess the story here is that we're trying to get through to people, and they can't get it through their heads because it's all just filtered through a lens of partisanship, is that this is showing a broader pattern of corruption that when you defend it, you're literally defending the man with his hand in your pocket that is stealing your money. The fraud that they're committing is a fraud on the Chinese people and on the American people because you've been told you should be on this side or that. So I would say personally, this would be a great place to start if we were looking to reform this whole tragic circumstance. But talking about reform, I'm way too far ahead of the ball here, because we're going to be talking about this probably for years before the majority of American people understand what kind of fraud was perpetrated on us and by who. Anyways, guys, like, share, sub the channel. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, all the ways to do so are in the pinned comment below. Y'all have a good night.